Hi, this is Cable Today. I'm Gary O'Reilly.
And I'm Mr Churchill.
Well, no Julia Roberts this time. It's me, and I'll be handling the show this evening. As you know, Cable Today is your very own local news programme covering the London boroughs of Croydon, Sutton, Merton, Kingston and Richmond. And you'll find us every evening on Channel 15 at 6:30 and again later on at 11 p.m.
Figures released today show a disturbing rise in the number of pregnant women carrying the HIV virus. We'll be finding out more on that story immediately after tonight's bulletin.
Coming up after the news headlines, we have our very own Debbie Flint. She'll be down at the Marble Hill Adventure Playground in Richmond, finding out what you can get up to this summer holiday, should you be a youngster. We also have Pete King in the studio for the Palace Chatback, and Pete's special guest is Graham Bickley, a man probably more familiar to you as Joey from Bread. Now, he's the lead in Miss Saigon in the West End hit, and he'll be talking about the Sunday Fun Day that takes place at Selhurst Park, and he'll be a part of a celebrity team. But first, Marcus with the news.
AIDS shock as new figures show killer disease spreading. Man accused of assaulting a Croydon policeman, and appeals for information after an off-licence is raided this morning. Our top story tonight, the number of people carrying the HIV virus has risen by a third over the past 2 years, sparking renewed calls for people to take the threat of AIDS seriously. The shock figures from the Kingston and Richmond Health Authority also reveal a rise in the number of babies being infected with HIV from their mothers. It comes on the day that the British Medical Journal published a report showing a rise in HIV infection among pregnant women in the capital. Researchers believe this is partly because of the increase of infected women entering Britain from sub-Saharan Africa. In Kingston, Richmond and the surrounding areas, there are believed to be over 200 people who are HIV positive, of whom 70 have developed AIDS. The British Safety Council say they have been forced to launch the National Condom Week for the 7th year, which begins on Monday, due to growing complacency towards the killer disease. Across the country, AIDS appears to be slowing down in the major risk groups of homosexual and bisexual men, while heterosexual infection now exceeds those in intravenous drug users. And we'll have more on that story in just a moment when I'm joined by Martin Weaver, who's a sexual health coordinator for Kingston and Richmond Health Authority. Today we return to the news of a worrying rise in the number of HIV carriers in the local area. And joining me now in the studio is Martin Weaver, who's a sexual health advisor at the Kingston and Richmond Health Authority. Good evening, Martin.
Good evening.
Those British Medical Journal figures showing a rise in pregnant women with HIV, what do you think the reason is for that?
I think there are two reasons. There's obviously an increase in the spread of HIV in the heterosexual population. And I think people are now coming forward for tests, for treatments. So we've got to be careful with this. Yes, it's an increase, but it's also an increase because people want to know more about what's going on.
Is anonymous screening of generally everyone, but especially, say, pregnant women, is that commonplace these days?
Depends what you mean by commonplace. Yes, it happens. Personally, I'd like to see it happen more, but it's available and in our local hospitals as well.
Are they carried out by the District Health Authority, by the government or by the hospitals?
I suppose the simple answer to your question is yes. I mean, the government says yes, we have to do it. The health authorities who have the contracts with the trusts make sure they do it, and the actual hospitals themselves are the people who practically take the tests.
Would you say these figures show there are death sentence for both?
No, let's lock this one straight on the head straight away. Even back in the early 80s, a diagnosis of HIV was never a death sentence. I think it's important to point out that what we're seeing at the moment is an ill population. We are not seeing all those people in the community with HIV who aren't ill, who are perfectly fit. And in fact, there was a report last week, a couple of weeks ago, saying that people could have the virus for up to 20 years and not know about it. So people who know they're positive at least have an inkling as the fact they need to look after themselves, that they have a warning, if you like, that says, hey, take care. And so that test, if it's positive, just says, make sure you get regular checkups and take care of yourself.
Could we end up in a situation whereby midwives will refuse to help women who are carrying the HIV virus?
Well, we could, but of course we've been here before. Richard Wells, who used to be at the Royal College of Nursing, once said to nurses generally that there was an opt-out clause. They could not treat people with AIDS if they wanted to, and that opt-out clause was called resignation. But people dealing like midwives have a right to up-to-date information and to proper resources and to proper training. So it's important that as this problem increases, as it undoubtedly is, we need to make sure all frontline staff are properly resourced and feel confident, because they need to provide a good service so that people will come forward, not only for testing but for treatments, and will continue to come back.
Martin, if I could move on to your figures that were released today by the Kingston and Richmond Health Authority. It shows that, for example, the number of young people who are having unprotected sex is quite significant. It's not far short of half of the population. What can you do to convince them otherwise?
Well, we keep pushing out the information to them. I mean, it's very difficult. You can only lay out information and hope that people will pick it up. I think particularly in Kingston and Richmond there is a belief that we are kind of outside London and London's a problem, and it happens to gay men or it happens to the black community, and therefore we're okay. Clearly that's not the case. And given what we said earlier on about an incubation period possibly of 20 years, that people could be infected and not know about it and be healthy in fact, but still could pass on the virus. So we need people to enjoy sex, and sex is one intimate way of getting to know people, and it's a very good way, but it needs to be safe.
Talking of safe, do you think for women, do you think they can feel safe?
Well, yes, they should be able to. The difficulty is that when you have a man and a woman coming together, it's not a simple one-to-one, in the sense that men often have more power in that relationship than women do. Women often aren't able to insist on the use of the condom, and it's the man that will override that. So I think women want to feel safe. I think it's a case that men are too scared, perhaps generally, to come up with the real answers or the real questions and to talk about things. And as a result, people end up having sex they're not really happy with, which makes them even more worried, because then they're worried about actually picking up not only HIV but getting pregnant and all those other things.
Okay, Martin Weaver, the Sexual Health Coordinator at Kingston Richmond Health Authority. Thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much indeed.
Coming up after the break, we find out somewhere where you can take the kids in the Twickenham area over the long, hot summer holidays. Plus, there's, of course, our regular Friday night Palace chat back. Stay with us. More coming up after this break with Gary O'Reilly. Don't go away.